Today is September 19th, 2010, and I am interviewing Todd Topliff. Todd is 38 years old. He was born on June 20th, 1972. My name is Lucas Topliff, and I will be the interviewer. Mr. Topliff is my dad. Dad, could you state for the recording what branch of service you served in?
I served in the United States Navy, and I was in the Navy during Desert Shield and Desert Storm, which was in 1990-91.
What was your rank?
I was an E5, which is equivalent to a second-class petty officer.
Where did you serve?
Well, during boot camp, I served at Great Lakes Naval Station, which is north of Chicago, and then after boot camp, went straight into my training classes, my training period of time, and that was also Great Lakes Naval Station, north of Chicago. And after that, I affiliated with the Reserve Unit in Indianapolis, and spent probably about 4 years there, and then finished up my time in Cincinnati at the Reserve Center down there.
How many years were you in the service?
I was in the service for a total of 8 years. It was an 8-year enlistment, and signed up in 1989 during my senior year of high school, I should say, and finished my time in 1997 when I was living in Cincinnati at that time, a total of 8 years though.
So you served during Desert Storm. Where were you living at the time?
Well, during Desert Shield and Desert Storm, I was actually at Ball State University. I was a college student, a freshman, and had just finished my training and from the military in October actually of 90, and affiliated in November of 1990 with the Reserve Center. And during Desert Storm, though, I was at Ball State and basically waiting day to day to see if I was going to be activated and sent off somewhere and have to drop out of school at that point. So.
How did you happen to serve during this war?
Well, it was just, I had already signed up, like I said, in '89. Nothing was going on at that time in Iraq and Kuwait with Desert Shield and Desert Storm. It was, Desert Shield didn't start until I was actually in training for Hospital Corps School, and it was basically just a fact of life of being already in the military when the conflict started. So.
What were you doing before you were enlisted?
Well, obviously before I was enlisted, I was in high school, and like I said, signed up during my senior year of high school in the military, and actually I graduated on a Saturday at the beginning of June, and on Tuesday had to report to boot camp. So basically had 2 days from graduation till I started boot camp.
Did anyone else in your family serve in the military?
Actually, I have a great-grandfather that was in the military and served in World War I. And I also have an uncle that was in the Air Force Reserves and has retired from the Air Force Reserves just in the last couple years, and he ended up being a colonel in the Air Force. And then I do have my father-in-law. He served during the Vietnam War.
Can you tell me about adapting to military life, such as physical regimen, barracks, food, social life?
Well, I'd say the biggest adaptation was during boot camp. The first couple weeks of boot camp were a real struggle, and I think it was a struggle for everybody, because you're coming from civilian life, civilian world. I came straight out of high school and go straight into the boot camp. And the first 2 weeks is basically where you're being, for lack of a better term, kind of torn down, kind of learning to live the life of the military, getting up 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, earlier sometimes, training, physical training, educational classroom training throughout the day, 3 meals a day type of thing. The 3 meals a day, what was interesting there is there's about 100 people in your unit, and when you go through to eat, when the last person sits down, you have 5 minutes to finish eating, then you have to get up and leave and move on. So obviously you want to be one of the first people to be able to get through the line and sit down. It gave you a few extra minutes to be able to eat your meal, but you had very short time to be able to do that, and it was challenging, especially the first couple weeks. Now by the time the end of boot camp came along, you were more used to that type of day and schedule and regimen that it seemed much more normal. You had adapted to it. So it was a challenge. And then when I went on to training for hospital corps school, it was more like a dorm college type life. The dormitory was had 4 people in a room, 2 bunk beds, and 4 desks. That's all the room was made up of. But you could come and go as you wanted to, and you could go to we'd go down to Chicago in the evening or what have you. We'd go out to the mall, go, kind of hang out places, that type of thing. More classroom, 8 hours a day, but after that, it was pretty much your life at that point. Now, you'd ask me about the barracks, and in boot camp, the barracks were like a giant hallway, a wide hallway that had bunk beds down each side of the room, along with some lockers. And the bunk beds, it was 2 people per bunk, basically, per set of bunk beds. And it was all in one room. You shared it with basically 100 other guys. So you got to know everybody fairly well, and you had to work together. I mean, cleaning the barracks, making sure everything was tidy. I mean, you were inspected, if not daily, at least weekly, on the cleanliness, how your bunk or your rack was made up, and how your clothes were folded, to everything. I mean, you had to be very organized and neat and tidy, and you were judged on it all the time.
How did you come to choose this branch of service?
Well, when I was in high school and I decided to go into the military, or in that process of deciding even to go into the military, I had a neighbor that was a year or 2 older than I was and was in the Navy Reserves. And so I talked to him some, kind of found out what it was like and what the demands were, what the benefits were, that type of thing, and I decided to probably go into the military, probably the Navy. And at that time, too, probably one of the highest deciding factors was what jobs were available in each branch of the military. And a lot of that is based on what their needs are, is what jobs they'll offer, and what you test as, and that type of thing, and what you qualify for based on grades or testing grades and that type of thing. So one of the choices was to be a hospital corpsman, which is a medic in the military, and it was something that I thought would not just help me during the military, but even down the line when I have a family, friends, that type of thing, that I'd have the first aid education, the life-saving techniques that I'd be able to learn and hopefully keep with me throughout life. And that was something I thought, even if not in the military, it'd help me through life and allow me to have that education.
What kind of training did you have?
Well, I was a hospital corpsman, and the training was a 16-week training course at Great Lakes Naval Station. Went there straight after boot camp. The training was classroom training, usually 8 hours a day. We would have clinical training. We'd train in the hospital there at Great Lakes Naval Station. The training basically was everything from first aid to nursing care in a hospital to battlefield dressing and triage in wartime type situations, to everything in between. Basically, training was equivalent to what you'd probably see a paramedic would get in the field to an RN would have on the nursing side of things, due to the fact that in the military they utilize hospital corpsmen, and we pass medications, we do IVs, we do all the stuff that mostly are done by nurses in the civilian hospitals. So I was trained to do all of that stuff in the military side of things.
Can you tell me about any friendships formed during the military?
Well, had some friends in boot camp that, of course, when you're in a room with 100 other guys, you learn about everybody and I guess become at least somewhat friends. But a couple good friends I had in boot camp. One was a bunkmate, the other was a guy across the aisle from me, and had a lot of similarities to what they had, where we were going to be reservists. We were basically straight out of high school, and like I said, the first couple weeks of boot camp, it really, you needed somebody that you could talk to, kind of form a friendship with to help get through that tough time, because it was a drastic change in day-to-day schedules and what you're used to. Of course, on the when I was in training for the medical corps school, had 3 roommates at that point. One of them came from active duty and was being trained as a hospital corpsman. The other 2 were going to be reservists, and one was from Arkansas, one was from Colorado. Kept in touch with the one from Colorado. He was just north of Denver, is where he lived, and kept in touch with him for a couple years probably, and visited him on a trip to Colorado at one point, probably a year or 2 after boot camp and training school and what have you. But I think with reserves, even the people that I trained with in Indianapolis or with the Marines or when I was in Cincinnati, I'd see them one weekend out of the month or 2 weeks for the summer. That they were friends during the time and maybe during the training times, but to say I kept track with many of them after that fact, not really to the point to where if I would have been on active duty and serving with a few different, people or the same people for many years. So the friendships were there, but since I've gotten out of the military and have finished there, I'd say it's kind of grown apart and we've moved on.
What receptions by the community like for returning service members?
Well, when Desert Storm was going on, I was obviously a student at Ball State, and I also lived in Gas City, my hometown. And whenever a service member would return from Iraq or Kuwait or from being on active duty, what I thought was very interesting, the community would always, they would have a fire truck and a police car sitting at the edge of town waiting for that service member to come in. They would be notified that they were coming back. And as soon as they get to the edge of town, the service member would ride the fire truck basically down through town. It was a way for the city to basically show their appreciation for what that service member has done for their country, the city, the county, the state, and for each other, for the community itself. And of course, when they'd come through town, everybody'd pull off to the side of the road. They would, honk their horns, wave, what have you, do whatever they could to give thanks to that service member to provide, the service that they gave to the country and to each of us. But they were very welcomely received by the community and everyone at that time.
Are you a member on any veterans organization?
I am not at this time. Of course, there's some veteran organizations that I probably would not qualify for, seeing how I did not actually serve in a foreign war or something like that, but I am not a member of any veterans organizations at this time.
How hard was it to return to civilian life?
Well, being that I didn't serve active duty other than through boot camp and training during Desert Shield, not being on active duty during the wartime and being away for a long period of time, I really can't answer on that part, but returning to civilian life from after boot camp and the training course and what have you, that was 5.5 months that I was gone, and to come back was a bit challenging because you're used to the regimen that was set for you through boot camp or the training time period. And actually an interesting story there is when I finished boot camp graduation, family came up, they were able to see, watch the boot camp graduation and what have you. And after graduation, we were able to leave for the day and go out and went with my parents. My sister was there, what have you, and we went to a local restaurant, went out to eat, that type of thing, and didn't really think anything of it. We go through the line. It was an Arby's, I believe it was. Got a roast beef sandwich, some fries, and milkshake or a pop or what have you, and sat down there and we started eating. And of course, I'm eating my food and what have you. And next thing I know, I finish my food. I look up and everybody's staring at me, and they're just I'm wondering why they're staring. Then I realize that they've only got one or two bites out of their sandwiches or what have you at that point, and I guess I had eaten my whole meal in just a couple of minutes, and they were wondering at what point I was going to take a breath or something like that. So there was a little bit of a change to, civilian life in the little parts like that. And like I said, without saying that to live in overseas or in a military situation and then trying to come back to civilian life, I'm sure that there were other challenges that came along with that. But for me, it was more so just trying to get out of boot camp and the training and get back into a more freedom, and I don't want to say freedom, but a unstructured lifestyle to where there wasn't certain times and certain things that had to be done in every second of the day. So,
do you have any contact with fellow members, veterans?
Well, I have, not from who I served with, but I do with basically family members that were veterans, my uncle, my father-in-law, that type of thing, that I still talk with them, just not with people that I actually served with. Again, being in the reserves, I think there was some disconnect there to where I only spent 2 days of the month or 2 weeks during the summer with the people in the reserves, whereas if I was on active duty, it would have been, every day, day in, day out, and probably had had a little more camaraderie and friendships with those people. So,
well, how has being in the military affected your life?
I think during that time, I think it came at a good time because it was right after high school and right before I went to college, and it was one of those things where I think there was a lot of responsibility learned. There was a lot of organization, learning about teamwork, learning about a lot of different things that really was not available through if I'd have just spent the summer or what have you before going to college. And I think it allowed me to, advance more so personally and responsibly over that period of time. And it's also taught me in the long run teamwork, how it takes a team to accomplish a task or what have you, because in the military, obviously, it's about your unit, it's about your co-workers, it's always a team-oriented type of situation. So it's taught that, it's taught, like I said, the responsibility, and I think I grew up a lot during that time, and it's even leads to today in my job and what have you. If you ask some of the other managers where I work there, they can pick out, there's a couple of us that have been through the military, and they can pick it out because, we're, I don't want to say more black and white, but it seems like it's more, goal or directly oriented to specific things that, to where we might be a little more structured than what some others are. Whether that's good or bad, that's a whole different thing. So, who knows?
What lessons have you learned during the military?
Well, I think the lessons were that it takes teamwork to accomplish a lot of tasks, because that's how the military is. It's team oriented. Like I said, you've got units, you've got all your guys around you accomplishing, going for one goal, and that's what you're taught. Whether it be in boot camp with your company, whether it be when you're on a ship, that it takes every person on the ship to make the ship run, to being in the Marines. It takes the whole unit. It takes the radioman, the corpsman, the commanding officer, everybody has their jobs and has tasks that they must accomplish to be able to make it all happen. So I think that's probably one of the biggest things, that and the responsibility that's on your shoulders.
Are there any questions that I forgot to ask you?
I don't think so. There are. I do have a story, I guess, that I think would be interesting for you to know. That like I said, I was in the Navy and I was a hospital corpsman in the Navy. But one thing that a lot of people don't know is the United States Marines use hospital corpsmen for their medic backup. Basically, the Marines have no medical field. They use the Navy medics. So for a little over a year, I was assigned with a Marine unit stationed out of Danville, Illinois, and it was an infantry unit, which is, I guess, what they call the grunts. We were the guys on the ground. It's more of your front line type of Marine units, and we would. It was probably the best year that I had in the reserves because it was more real life training for the military. It was not the classroom type training. We would spend 2.5 days at Camp Atterbury. You'd sleep out there in a sleeping bag. It didn't matter if it was June or if it was December. You would be there. You'd sleep on the ground. It was just like what war could possibly be, because you don't get to fight just in the fair weather days. You got to do it on the cold days, the snowy days, the rainy days, and what have you. But you were out there for 2 full days and spending the night out there. Basically surviving, doing more training, as in with live ammunition, live mortar rounds, all different kinds of training steps. And I mean, we had actual injuries, or whatever. No, luckily nobody getting shot or anything like that. But you had injuries out there, but it was more real life training as opposed to speculating what things could be and sitting in a classroom saying, okay, if you have this kind of patient, what do you do? But with the Marines, it was very interesting to serve time with them because it was exciting. It was, like I said, you were out and about. We, for a 2-week active duty, we went down to Camp Lejeune down in the Carolinas and spent 2 weeks with the infantry unit, the Marine unit down there, and we did everything from beach landings on boats to there was extractions by helicopter. We'd go out for 3 or 4 days, and you had what was on your back, and you carried everything with you, and basically did different. You were going through jungle. We even had a day where we spent in a mock city that was set up, and we basically took position in the city, and another unit basically came in and tried to take over the city. And with that, we used what they called Miles gear, which is it's similar to like laser tag.